Hello Reddit readers. Today we have stories about the most disgusting people on the timeline. I will not detain you anymore. Like and subscribe to the channel of pleasant viewing. Story 1 from user Cinema Freak. Dated a woman who had made a couple of films, which according to a friend in that biz, makes her a porn star. She was actually very well adjusted, and the experience had been, according to her, very helpful for her self-esteem. She had a good corporate job at a place that had long-term, furnished rental units all over the country. They went belly up after being merged with another company that ran it into the ground. Some of you smarty pants can suss out which one. She was a graduate of a Seven Sisters college and from a small town in Vermont. She was thick, very busty, and beyond cute. She had been plump all through H's college, so she had some body image issues. She got into swinging when she moved to SoCal, and from that, met someone who asked if she wanted to pose nude for a busty magazine. She followed the photographer's advice was listed on a service. She was a thick mudflap come-to-life with a girl next door. Smile, she became very popular. She loved it. Eventually, she decided to take the plunge and do some porn scenes. She had already allowed herself to be recorded at some of the swing parties she had attended. She made just 23 scenes for some porn films. I still run across her clips on Xhamster and Pornhub. She had fun making those scenes, and it shows she definitely didn't fake it. She got married a few years ago. Her parents gave her their house when they did what everyone does back east does and moved to Florida, Vermont. Winters are not fun when you are 70. She had taken a buyout when the company was taken over, and her husband, WFH, last time I ran into her, she was starting to look like what she is. A middle-aged woman. It gives me a smile to think in a few more years, when age really catches up to her, as it already has for me, and will for you too. And she's out somewhere having dinner. The other patrons will have no idea that the sweet plump she was putting on pounds when I saw her little old lady once made some porn that millions of people spent their nights fapping to. Story 2 from user JesseFrance89. My ex was a co at one point, and he quit because he couldn't stand how horrid the others were to the prisoners. He made the point that if you treat them all like animals, how to expect to rehabilitate prisoners? He wouldn't tell me a lot because he said some of the things he witnessed were vile. He tried to be kind to the prisoners, not to the point of allowing them to run over him, but to show that he saw them as human beings. My ex isn't even that great of a person, lol. But I'll give him this one. My aunt has been in and out of the prison system the last few years. It's a long story, and while she did deserve to serve time, she is not a bad person. She's a broken woman who lost her child, fell into drugs to control her grief, and made some really bad choices. The cause she's told us about are horrid. They look down on all of them and treat the women even lesser than the men. They would treat her like she was a murderer or something, steal their mail, and wouldn't allow them to seek medical attention when they needed it. IDKY in America. Of all places, we have allowed our prison systems to become so deplorable. I get they are there to be punished, but they are also there to be rehabilitated and returned to society as a more capable person. But they don't, because the prisons are just making them feel like they are nothing but trash. There's a reason that there is such a high rate of offenders returning to prison, because they are sort of being tortured and are never given the resources or tools to get their life together. Not all prisoners are murderers, rapists, etc. Many are good people who made a bad decision, and probably when they were in a bad position in their life. Edit. I'm getting a lot of responses about my part saying "in America of all places." And yes, I realize our history is not good. Trust me, I'm one of the people constantly screaming about the lies we were raised on, etc. I'm not trying to pretend that we didn't have slaves that we still aren't fighting against. Racism, classism, homophobia, and more. It's very harmful to ignore the atrocities that your country has committed. We should acknowledge and try to be better. I just want to add, almost every single country in the world has some type of history they aren't proud of. It's not just America. The problem with many Americans is they want to ignore our history and pretend we are perfect in every way, and that's simply not true. It was more of a point that, not being a third world country, we have almost comparable prisons. To be fair, I don't know a ton about prisons in other countries and need to educate myself more. But I know some other countries have much better prison systems and such, where rehabilitation is the focus. Please don't break down an entire 3-paragraph comment discussing the conditions of our prisons into 5 words that can be taken out of context. I know America has issues. Most of us do know. We aren't the worst country in the world, but we are far from the best too. Our history is covered in death and blood, as is most of world history. It's just sad that humans, for all of our achievements, still don't know how to be decent to each other. Story 3 from user Cinema Freak. Therapists, either psychologists or psychiatrists, have way too many up people, although it seems having to go through med school weeds out a lot of the would-be psychiatrists. I have to be very careful here, not to dox a friend. So details have been deliberately fudged to protect their identity. Also, they engaged an attorney, but when it became clear in order to sue this asshole too much about her situation would need to come out at trial. They took the lawyer's advice not to pursue it, to protect themselves mentally. They also now have an awesome therapist. My friend is trans and is a very typical story of how that transition happened, grew up in the South. So once they realized they weren't growing out of the wear mom's clothes phase, wanting guys to want them as a girl. Hey, I put my mom's blonde wig and some makeup on when I was like 14. I looked ridiculous, never did it again. They built a secret wardrobe. Luckily, they are very smart. Went to uni, and at 27 began the transition. My friend is now a reasonably attractive woman. It's hard for me to subjectively judge, because I still see a lot of the guy who used to beat the shit out of me at racquetball in college. Well, everyone did. I sucked at it, lol. I have no idea if they have had the surgery because it's none of my business for the purposes of this post. They are now Fran and Fran Rocks. Once the hormones took hold and Fran began to need less help. Looking femme, Fran told me. She began to make up for lost time. The only reason I know what PrEP is because she told me. So her body count went up fast if we used our fingers' toes. We'd need a few more people for the notches in her bedpost. Fran sowed a lot of oats. Very fast, and sadly, somewhere along the way, one of those oats assaulted Fran. And if she hadn't have been able to fight back, she thinks this pus might have killed her. A friend took her to the hospital. The police were called in. But it was app hookup, and he hid his ID very well. Plus, the police weren't exactly sympathetic once they realized that Fran was trans, but a lot of them sure did like to hook up with her. She told me. So Fran got herself into therapy. It went well for a few months, then the poor bastard had a stroke, the doc. Not Fran. He partially recovered but decided he had to retire because his condition would be too distracting to patients. Fran says she understood, and he found a referral. It did not go well from the beginning. In Fran's opinion, the guy wasn't comfortable with her being trans, and began to talk about himself more. He was gay. So at first, all this talk about issues with his boyfriend was his way of getting her to be comfortable about her own issues, or something like that. But now she thinks he simply realized he was not comfortable with her, and is sure she was his first trans patient about 6 months into it. He drops the bomb. He is marrying the boyfriend, and they are moving to coastal town about 3 hours away. Before she can ask if he will be coming up to still see patients, or maybe able to meet halfway, he blurts out that he won't be seeing any patients locally. Once he moves, the attorney was very confident they could easily sue him and probably cost him his license. He took the referral. Either a knowing he was probably moving away, or B, it's all bullshit. All they have to do is get him to state all this in the deposition, which would give them grounds to subpoena the boyfriend-fiancé. But to make the quack pay, Fran's life would be exposed, and she's had experience with past co-workers, not exactly reacting well, both men and women. So she dropped it and found someone else, someone who had to first work through the trauma. The last one caused? Yeah. Fran is never allowed to tell me this. Asshole's name, this guy, definitely needs a stranger on the street to just slap him. Slap if he's lucky. The timing of this post is very eerie. I just learned all this last month when I was back home for a visit, and Fran came down to see me since I was only 100 miles away. Instead of my usual 2,500, Fran is also sadly not the first time I knew someone who had a shitty therapist. My college girlfriend's sister decided after her divorced, she wanted to pursue something she had put off for that marriage and go to the seminary. This one required all applicants to see a therapist to see if they were cut out for basically becoming one as priests. But her first session did not go well, and he wanted her to return. Luckily, she had already met some of the other potential classmates at an icebreaker coffee thing, and she compared notes with would-be classmate. The effing a hole had done the same thing to the other person when the next person they contacted said she too had to do several sessions to get his approval. It became clear he was squeezing them out of money. It had all to do with their fitness for priesthood. My GFS sister just walked, but the others banded together and the seminary fired the guy. The women who remained were given full scholarships for their silence. So this sadly did not make it into the news. So yeah, I have a very healthy distrust of that profession, which isn't doing a good enough job screening their applicants, it seems. Story 4 from user Fantastic RFoxTHM. It's funny, because people throw out the most obvious professions, but I can speak from first-hand experience that it is without question seafarers. There are far too many negative things that all occur at the same time, and it does a number on people. Isolation, both physically and a lot of times on the communication front. You're away from your family and friends for extended periods of time. Also, it is not uncommon for internet, TV, and phone to go out for periods of time, effectively cutting you off entirely from the outside world. Money, there's a lot of money in sailing. When a lot of people get to land, they have hole burning in their pockets. Drugs, alcohol, and prostitution runs rampant as soon as the boat hits land. And truthfully, it continues once the boat leaves port, minus the prostitution. Of course, then once people get home, they make outlandish purchases, and they're back to broke-in. A moment's notice, infidelity. Cheating on your spouse is almost a badge of honor at sea. Whether it be fooling around with other people at sea, with you, or engaging with escorts. A lot of cheating goes on. Seafarers are among the highest professions for divorce. I would say that every other sailor I know is divorced, and every 15th sailor I know is divorced twice or more. I've also known people who have 2 separate families in different countries. For Christ's sake, exhaustion, sleep deprivation. It varies considerably, but I will use my job as an example. I work 28 days straight at a time. 12-hour days, plus overtime for call-outs. I've worked 16 18-hour days before. Plus, if you're in rough weather, you just don't sleep at all. I've been up for 3 straight days before and I didn't sleep because the weather calmed down. I slept because my body physically shut down and I lost consciousness. This is not an uncommon occurrence. It ruins you physically and mentally maturity because we're isolated at sea. All we have is each other. There is a lot of camaraderie in that. But pretty much always the entire crew will devolve into the mental state of the least mature person on the boat. This results in a lot of crudeness, sexism, racism, homophobia, and pretty much every other horrible tendency a person can muster. Now, I'm fortunate in that. I haven't seen a lot of this, but I've seen some of it, and that's already way too much reduced quality of life. Morale. On a ship can be killed very easily. There are very few things to look forward to. So when one of them is severely lacking, it kills everyone's attitude. The cook. This trip sucks and the food is bad. Everyone is miserable. The internet has been down for a week and there's almost no way to contact home. Everyone is miserable. The weather has been bad and no one's sleeping. Everyone is miserable. When everyone is miserable, the mood just gets toxic. Anger just permeates the entire vessel, readjusting to life at home. This is especially true for people who work on boats and do like 612-month trips at a time. But even doing 4 weeks is hard when you are away. That long, your family learns to live without you. And when you come home, it becomes apparent quickly that you're not even really needed there anymore. You feel like a stranger in your own home. In fact, you feel like you're in the way. I once did a trip that was only 3 months, and when I came home, I didn't even feel like a part of my family. It hurt me tremendously, but my partner heard me out, and we both realized we needed to fix this. And we did a lot of. People are not as lucky as me, though, missing major life events I have missed: concerts, festivals, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, performances, deaths, births. The list goes on and on. It's painful as, and there is no way to get that moment back. You just weren't there. There are a lot of other things at play, but these are some big things that people don't realize until they've lived this life. If you don't have the right mentality, it's a brutal way to live. I have met many people in this job who are shells of their former selves. They have lost everything to this career, and now this job is literally all they have. There are far too many people who sail well into an age they shouldn't be, but they've just got nothing else. Being at sea is their life. Their off time is when they feel like they're at work, because they don't know how to do or be anything else anymore. Fortunately, I'm well suited for it, and my family life is as strong as the day I started sailing. But that's because I work hard to make sure it's a struggle, but you need to be ready for it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and write comments. See you later.